What is going on, comic fam? It's your boy, the bearded comic bro, and I am joined by some special guests, Calum, who you guys might know, Chaos. What's actually your Instagram handle? Because it's numbers, so I don't want to get them wrong.
Yeah. Chaos 136925.
Yes, Instagram links will be in there. It Calum was one of the first people that I connected with in the comic book community, and when I knew I was going to do the show, I was like, I gotta have you on to talk with me. And if you don't know, bringing back friend of the show, Tim Sheridan. Welcome back, my friend.
Hey, thank you for having me back.
Yeah. So
we just saw each other in Cleveland.
we were just at a con in Cleveland a couple weeks ago, and I was like, all the times I've had you on the show, we've never really talked about Masters of the Universe.
That's so
and
weird.
we got to talk about the comic. We got to talk about the show. And then once I knew we were doing that, I was like, Calum, you got to be on this show because you might be the biggest Masters of the Universe fan I've ever met in my life. So no pressure.
Yeah. I have a feeling I'm going to let a lot of people down tonight, but I
Listen,
do love it. I've loved it since I was a kid, but I could probably introduce you to a couple who are going to be even bigger than me, so to speak.
Calum, the only one who's going to disappoint anyone is me because I work in Masters. I work with those guys. I work with He-Man and Skeletor. They're from work. And if there's so much to not know in Masters of the Universe that's going to be me.
Yeah.
I usually walk around with like the giant compendium under my arm whenever we're working, so I can just, because I can't keep anything up here, thank goodness it's written down.
And this is, I didn't even tell you, Tim, but this is just called gotcha journalism because we're just going to catch you of like all the stuff you don't know about Masters of the Universe. I'm like, who? But I didn't even tell you this. I have a beef with you, and I just want to get it out there in the air, in the open. I'm pretty sure your name was attached to Hope for a Destination episode that you wrote, and you only
That wasn't the title that I wrote, by the way.
You only showcased my boy Blade very briefly.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I feel like he should have been in there a lot longer. So I'm just throwing that out there off the bat. Like,
listen, I was doing what I could, to like start planting seeds for what we ended up doing in Revolution, which was really bringing in a lot more of the 87 movie lore, because that was the premise of the show. The idea was it would be a sequel to everything, all the classic stuff in the in the only, I mean, in the best way you could. I mean, it's impossible. It's impossible because there are things that don't, can't canonically work with each other. Sure. So we had to kind of pick and choose. Kevin and Teddy and Rob had to pick and choose what they, but the executive producers, what they, how we want, what we wanted to emphasize, what we didn't want to emphasize, and that whole thing. But we knew that we wanted to do stuff from the movie. I'm trying to think of though, originally, oh yeah. Originally, it wasn't going to be Pig Boy and it wasn't going to be Blade. There was somebody else that was supposed to be in that scene. And I don't know if I can say who it
Seems
was.
like a statute of limitation should have passed. Like it's been a while since that came out.
Oh man, I no, you know what? I'm gonna get in trouble if I say because they might still try and no, they never will. In the script, it, I tried to figure out a way to have Songster in that scene, and which, for anyone who doesn't know, do you guys know who this is, right? This was this like minstrel, like a balladeer character who told you the story of the Masters of the Universe tour that went around to around the country back in the day. And this cool, like, rock and roll guy with a, guitar and stuff. And the problem was I put him in there and Teddy Biaselli was like, he's not a villain. You can't have him in there. He's not a villain. And I'm like, he's not anything. Like, what are you talking about? Like, and how do you know? Time has passed. Like, maybe he is a villain now. You don't know. And so we ended up making some changes to who the characters were in that, occupying Grayskull in that moment.
Yeah. Well, I'd even mention like part of the reason we're having this discussion with you, Tim, is you are a writer for the show Revelation and Revolution. You're also on Revolution, correct me if I'm wrong, consulting producer, correct?
Consulting producer. Doesn't that sound great? They had to consult with me on everything. No, I'm just kidding. That's one of those weird Hollywood titles.
And the craziest thing about the whole rewatch, I was just telling Calum backstage before you even hopped on. I didn't even realize it the first time I watched. You also are freaking a voice actor in the series.
I managed to con my way into a cameo this season for Revolution. So, so spoilers ahead for anyone who hasn't watched Revolution, but spoilers for the whole show.
Yeah, we're talking spoilers here. If you haven't
watch the 15 episodes of the show, read the 4 soon to be 5 issues of the comics that'll be out, and then come back and listen to this. But wait, what were we talking about?
You, voice actor.
Oh yeah, voice acting. I'm so old. I got to voice King Miro in a flashback. So He-Man's grandfather, but for me, the most exciting thing was the father of both Luke Skywalker himself, Mark Hamill, and Captain Kirk himself, Bill Shatner. I play the dad of Hamill and Shatner, which was maybe is my biggest claim to fame. I can probably put that on my tombstone now. It was great.
I should have just introduced you on the show of we've got Luke Skywalker and Captain Kirk's dad on the show.
Yeah. I heard it the first time. I went and I did it. Then I heard it and I said, "Are you sure you want to leave me in? Are you guys sure we shouldn't we shouldn't call Dolph Lundgren or somebody to come in and do this?" And but everybody was really happy with the scene and what I had done. I had written the episode, so like originally Miro had more dialogue, and I ended up giving it all to Harley Quinn Smith, Kevin's daughter, who was my scene partner, playing my wife, and because I wanted to like be as inconspicuous as I could. But and she's so good, she could do it all.
Yeah. So what about for both of you, as we're just fans talking about our love for what is it that your first memory of Masters of the Universe, or what got you into loving the property?
So I don't remember what my first memory was. I don't know what the first was. It probably, I mean, if I could extrapolate, it probably would have been a commercial on TV for the show, the old cartoon back in the 80s, that would have led me to turn on that show and watch the show. Probably either that or it was just an episode of the show. I don't think it could have been that I saw the toys on shelves first. My friends didn't have any of the toys, and I didn't have them when I was a kid because I was really deep on Transformers and G.I. Joe, and we didn't have a lot of money. So my parents were, really good about keeping me flush with Transformers and G.I. Joe. You see some Transformers over here. But there was, there was no way I was going to get another line in there to collect. So I watched the show. I watched the show, and I watched He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and I watched She-Ra as well, because they were connected, and I had to watch both of them to get the whole story, even though that's not how it worked back then. But that's how you felt. So that was it. That was it. Would have been the show. Would have been the shows. Would have been my way in. But I don't remember that first time. Do you, Calum? You must remember.
I can't tell you necessarily what the first time was, so to speak, because I think I was about 6 when it came out, right? So 82. But I watched the cartoons religiously. I had the figures. I mean, as you guys saw before we actually started recording, I still have my Castle Grayskull and my Snake Mountain.
Yeah.
Pretty sure I still have my original Battle Cat and a broken down version of He-Man that is everything is missing pieces. Everything was well worn and played with. And of course, I've added on a lot of the new merchandise, of course, but I mean, it goes back. And I mean, I was even a big fan of was it 2002 show?
Hmm.
I was a big fan of it as well.
And do you have
It gutted me when Cartoon Network didn't bring it back. Had
did you
my
collect
boys hooked
those
on.
Four Horsemen figures?
No,
You did?
I didn't have as much figures and stuff like that at that time period when a lot of that was coming out. And of course, some of those things now they're very pricey, and I can't explain how my brain works. Like I will drop a stupid amount of money on a comic book, and some of these He-Man books that are up on the wall, they weren't cheap at all. But for whatever reason, when it comes to the figures, some of the collectible stuff, I have a much harder time making myself justify that. But for a comic book, I don't know why. I'm like, yeah, dude, it's worth it. Let's get it right now.
So when the 2000X show came out and those figures hit shelves, I just loved those figures. I loved the sculpt and those figures. And I was getting back into buying toys right at that time. So but I didn't get all of them. Like I just picked up a few that I really liked that I thought were really cool. But I loved that show. I thought it was really cool. I loved the opening sequence. The opening titles for that show were hilarious, where he's like, I am Adam, Prince of Eternia, and then he gets like cut off from, when there's an attack rather than continuing the whole thing. It was so cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had my boys hooked on it, and I don't know how much money I spent on those figures for them. And unfortunately, I think some of those were given away at their mom's house, unfortunately.
Mm.
But we might have to have a few pieces. Like I'm pretty sure I actually have the Prince Adam from the 2002 run, probably on the shelf in there. And my original Prince Adam without the sweet vest. But
So, see, that's the thing is like my fandom came from the toys and the movie. I don't remember much about the TV show just because of where I was at, and the toys had already come out because they were 82 we had said, because the toys came out before the show and and all that. I got hooked on the movie, and the VHS, I ran through that Dolph Lundgren movie from nonstop. And so I had the toys, and then I had all of those because I didn't have cable and I didn't have anything like that. So we weren't cable rich, but I had every single playset of He-Man and Masters of the Universe. But so for me, my love came from watching that VHS tape over and over and over again. So it's a weird, like, I feel like Masters of the Universe, you can have multiple different ways you get into the fandoms, and it's really unique and weird. But like, I know it didn't do well at the box office, but for me, at the age that I watched the Dolph Lundgren movie, it resonates with me. And it's still, I'm looking on my pool table, I'm trying to figure out, I have the massive, like, huge poster of the movie. I'm like, I got to figure out how to get that framed and put up on my wall.
But what you said about how everybody kind of there are different entry points into the franchise, that's the big challenge when you're making a show like Revelation. There are, excuse me, it's not just Revelation, but really anything where we're going back over here in Hollywood and reaching back into the vault and bringing back something, or lifting it back, raising it back up again, something that we all grew up with and that a lot of people have love for. But the problem is there hadn't been a lot of Masters of the Universe content over the years, whereas there's like a new Transformers series every year. There's live action movies, there's just lots of stuff going on with that brand all the time. I think fans were left with, you had comics which had different angles on stuff. You had certainly mini comics from the old toys. You had then the classics line had some different stories for characters, and the 2000X show, the old show, the movie. There were,
and don't forget the space version.
The New Adventures of He-Man. Yeah.
I'm trying to forget that version.
Or yeah, that's what I was going to say. Or maybe we can forget that one, but
no.
I mean, honestly, that's the one that I don't know really. I mean, anything about.
I think that one is ready for a reimagining now. We should try to make that concept work. That's the kind of weirdo I am. I'm
so
like,
back to Revolution. So
so that's the thing though, is that everybody kind of ends up creating their own headcanon for how all of those things can work together, and not just as a multiverse, but like maybe this comes after this, and this is because of this, and these characters are the same, and what have you. So when you go back and try to make a show like Revelation, you're fighting, unfortunately, without knowing it, 40 years of fan headcanon. And our version is kind of our headcanon for this is how we think it worked out. And we've got Mattel on our side. So it's actual kind of canon, I guess. But we don't want to negate stuff that people love and the way that they've experienced it and loved it for so long. So it's a tricky balance. It's the same with all the stuff that I have worked on, all the different intellectual property.
Yeah. It's about that way with pretty much everything these days. I don't think most people take enough time to sit back and realize how fortunate we are to be given the things that we're being given right now. And like you said, whether, pretty much any intellectual property, there are going to be some people who are going to love what you did, like where I think we were talking beforehand, where you talked about the Long Halloween. There are going to be some people who are going to have loved everything that you did with that. But there are going to be some people who are going to find the smallest little things to nitpick about or complain about. But
and they do it on the internet.
Yeah, because their opinion is the most important opinion, and everybody has to be shared. And I get it. Like, hey, I got my opinions too. Like, as you can tell, I'm a big Star Wars fan. I still enjoyed the sequels. Were they perfect? No, but guess what? I can go back and pick things apart from the original trilogy, the prequels, or whatever. But I still love it. And the people who didn't, luckily I started finally seeing some folks out there who were starting to really praise Revelation and everything when it was going, but there was just so much negativity. I'm like, dude, I don't know how you guys live with yourself. If all I ever did was try to find the bad and stuff,
that's what I say, Calum.
Greatness in that show.
Calum, that's what I say. I'm like, just focus on what you like. You don't have to talk about stuff you don't like. Why waste your time and energy, filling your heart with the stuff that you hate? Revelation was an interesting thing because we had two different things going on at the same time. We had real lifelong diehard fans who were had headcanon and had ideas about what they wanted the show to be. And then when it wasn't exactly what they imagined it could be, they were understandably disappointed with some of the choices we made. That happens with everything you do anytime you adapt something or do another version of it. But we were also at the same time that was happening, we were fighting the sort of clickbait universe of people who were just coming after the show. They were kind of telling lies about it, and they were trying to rile people up to score points and get clicks for their YouTube videos or whatever. And all of that ended up creating this cacophony right before the show was coming out, and right around when the show came out, that could be confused by people who were neither of those things. Like a news outlet would then start writing stories about the controversial Masters of the Universe show, and we're like, wait, no, it's so much more nuanced than that, because you've got fans who care deeply about this, who want it handled a certain way, and then you've got people who are just trying to score some points because they think we're going to lift up their voices on Twitter, So you can't lump those things together, is what I'm saying. There were two different things going on, and unfortunately it was all happening at the same time, But I think in the middle of it all, we had a pretty damn good show.
Oh no, it was a great show. Don't get it twisted. It wasn't damn good. It was great. I mean, it was good. It is a phenomenal show. And the people who were complaining about stuff, there wasn't enough He-Man in it. Dude, it's He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. And I love me some He-Man.
It wasn't even, by the way, it wasn't even He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. It was called Masters of the Universe. But
very true.
but still He-Man is the central character.
Right.
And when you have removed the main character from the story in the first episode, use your brain. Like he's of course he's coming back.
Right.
And the first few episodes, the first like 3 episodes dealt with, or 4 really dealt with, his absence and what that means. And that's an important storytelling tool. We
I
have to
thought so.
remind you why he's so important and why everyone loves him and needs him. And
But it also gave you a chance
it.
It gave you a chance to bring in and talk about so many other characters too.
Yeah.
And to see people, I mean, as you were talking about earlier, like you're bringing in characters from the movie, right? Like, dude, like I was geeking out when that happened. And I'm not even the hugest, like I will watch the movie. It's kind of like a car wreck. I can't stop watching. Like I even if I wanted to turn my head, I couldn't sometimes. But like I was like geeking out. I was like, this is great. And I mean, like going into Eternia and seeing, everything that we saw, like in the history and the characters being brought in, like, dude, and y'all want to complain? Like this is next level.
Do you know what the big complaint that you referenced was not enough He-Man, right? Do you know what the weird statistic is about that show, about Revelation? Do you know out of those 10 episodes, how many episodes He-Man wasn't in? He was, first of all,
He was in every episode, wasn't he?
was
At
in
least
every
in a flashback.
episode. First of
He was
all,
in
That's
every
what I was
episode
thinking.
with
I
the
was like, I
Second
can't
of all-
remember one that he wasn't.
second of all, he was dead for 2 episodes. Episodes 2 and 3.
And correct me if my time frame might be mistaken too. Didn't the first 5 all drop at the same time?
Yeah.
Yes.
First 5. And then unfortunately, Netflix broke it and
Yeah.
did the next 5 a little later, which, we all kind of wish that it had all just dropped at once. There was no reason they were done. There was no reason they couldn't have all dropped at the same time. Or they
Well,
could have done.
it built up some anticipation for me, I can tell you. Like I went back and rewatched the first 5, and my oldest son did as well. He was, I think he was still living here at the time. I think if not, we went back and watched them all together. So we got to spend that time together. Because like I said earlier, I'd got him hooked in on the 2002 show.
That's the best.
And
I love hearing stories like that.
So we enjoyed watching all of it. And, I'm selfishly still hoping, even though Google has proved kind of fruitless in my search for part 2 of Revolution.
Only 5 episodes. Only 5 episodes of Revolution. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's okay to make 5 more. It's okay. Like
It would take some time. If Netflix wanted us to do it, we'd do it. It would take some time. It would probably be the 3rd season though of the show. It would have a new name.
literally my only complaint from this season's run was that it was just not enough. And I guess if my complaint is there just wasn't enough of it, then
That's a good complaint.
Yeah.
Look, we always want to leave you wanting more, I guess, but I'm not going to argue with you. Like, we wish, of course, that we'd been able to do more. That's how many episodes that were green lighted for us, that we were allowed to make. And so we had to, tell the best story we could and with that real estate. Now, to be frank, I actually think that ended up making the show better in some ways. I think there's a lot about Revolution in terms of the pace, in terms of the action, and the toyetic nature of it. I mean, it's like every episode, there's just all these new characters, new outfits, new things, stuff is happening all the time. It made it feel even bigger. And what was to me, and yet we were in a smaller amount of space in 5 episodes. But opinions will vary on that. But it was challenging, certainly, to get that much story into those 5 episodes. But
Did you have a favorite?
I can't believe how well we pulled it off, to be honest.
Did you have a favorite moment by chance from the 5? Because I actually have a favorite moment. I was telling my wife about it earlier before.
Revolution.
We were talking about coming down here.
Favorite moment is probably, oh, there's so many. Oh yeah, I know exactly what it is. My favorite moment is one that I wrote. Big surprise. But it is when in episode 4, when they're outside the palace and there's an attack, and they manage to fight it off, and Marlena, I believe it's Marlena, says, "Is everybody good?" And then Evil Lynn just tracks past the camera and says, "I really haven't decided yet."
So
that was a
good.
good one. That was a good one. Did you have a favorite moment, Greg?
Oh, absolutely. And as you all know where my fandom came into, because Tim, I had you on the show back in the fall talking about Alan Scott, and you had
Mhm.
mentioned like, hey, we got some Masters of the Universe coming up. You're gonna be excited. I think like shortly after we talked, that trailer dropped. And when I saw Gwildor, I geeked out. So when Duncan shows up to the door and not like, we travel on an adventure across the universe together, and you hear Gwildor's voice, I was just like, uh, this is like, it's almost because I'm the guy who still has a Gwildor figure. Okay,
There he
like
is.
it reminds me very similar to like a Jar Jar Binks kind of thing. Like everyone's like, oh, I don't like Gwildor, I don't like Jar Jar, but like it was this like moment of like it's been so separated since that movie came out that people are like, I love Gwildor more than
Here,
I.
let's make them kiss. No, I'm just kidding.
So that moment for me was fantastic. Like when it brought back, because you had teased Blade, right? But then you got so much, and the voice actors that you had in that, you know, you're
Okay, but
bringing
wait,
back characters from that movie
put a
too.
pin in that because you know who voiced Gwildor in the show, right?
Yes. No, I don't,
so
because it's not the original.
no, Billy Barty
Yeah,
unfortunately left this
yeah.
world. Um, uh, but we happened to know someone who was close to the production who did used to do that voice all the time. And we all knew that he did this great. He's a trained originally as a voice actor, actually has some voice acting credits, is a really talented guy who made some other choices in his life and became we started working in development in Hollywood and started just rising through the ranks until he became a director of original series for Netflix and is the executive producer of Masters of the Universe Revelation and Revolution. Teddy Biaselli voices Gwildor in the show,
Did not.
and he is magnificent. He does so he didn't know. Kevin and I went in and pitched Teddy that we were going to bring Gwildor into the show, and he was like, and Kevin's like, and we have a great Gwildor actor already lined up, and Teddy's like, who? And like Kevin from the beginning wanted to make sure Teddy got to do that. So we had to twist his arm a little bit, but he was the perfect, nobody else could have done that as well as he did. He sounds just like Billy Barty. And he's got the energy of him. Like he knows the character. Teddy is one of the biggest Masters of the Universe fans in the world. The shows that he works on for Netflix are not typically an animated series or something like this. He's the executive on Masters of the Universe because he really wants to be. He's the guy who brought us Wednesday. He's the guy who brought us Umbrella Academy, the live action Avatar series. He does these huge, big budget live action shows, spectacles. But Masters of the Universe means everything to him in his life, and so he also I got the opportunity to get to work with him on the story for the new comic book that's the prequel tie-in to Revolution that's going to be beginning to come out on May 15th. So you'll see Teddy Biaselli's name right there on the cover. First time he's ever had a comic book credit. So it's exciting.
That's so cool. Calum, what was your moment? Because it spawned the question.
Yeah, so I can't remember which episode it was, but it's when He-Man, if I remember correctly, he grabs Teela and he does the transformation by holding her and everything, right? And then you pan over to Cringer, and he's like, "You mean to tell me all this time we could have done it with a hug?" I was like, "That's the best," because like Cringer is kind of like Jar Jar to me, Greg. So you think like I love Cringer, I loved Battle Cat, but Cringer sometimes could be a little annoying, right? Very whiny, almost kind of like tattooing Luke, so to speak. Extremely whiny and just very scared and dramatic and
Talent
everything. But
converters.
when he bust out, you mean we could have been doing it with a hug this whole time? I was like, that is the best line
You know, I love
ever.
that line. I think Kevin wrote that line. I believe. Yes, that was in episode 5. That was
There's
Kevin's episode.
there's so many moments like that you all add into the show, like even to even kind of play off of that one. Then at the end in the final episode, where they're everything's happened, and then Orko just like alone at last, and they just kind of look at him like, "What are you still doing here?" Like he's like, "Oh,
Yeah, that was a fun dynamic between Orko and Gwildor because
yeah."
everyone knows that the reason why Gwildor exists is because they felt they couldn't do Orko in the movie, couldn't do him justice. The hovering character with, the shadowed face and all that.
But it was great seeing them together like that. I'm telling you, man, it's
So
the
they had to be
moments,
rivals. They had to be rivals.
the moments that you guys have brought us between the two series and everything, man. They're so wonderful.
But Caleb, it's because the show is made by people who absolutely love these characters and love this brand and this story, this mythology so much that I mean, for every one of those that you see in the show, imagine the hundreds of moments and stories and jokes that we had to leave on the cutting room floor and couldn't do. But that's because you had people who have a lifetime of love for Masters of the Universe, in that room trying to play with as many of the toys as you can. I mean, that was the thing I kept saying to Rob David from Mattel, our executive producer from Mattel, and Teddy Biaselli, that when we knew we were only going to have 5 episodes, they kept saying, "Oh, we should also add this, and we should have this and this." And I was like, "You guys, we can't dump all the toys out of the box and play with all of them. We can't. We just can't. We only have 5 episodes." And they were like, honestly, the response I always got was, "Why can't we? Let's do it. Let's dump out all the toys." Because that's who we all are. We're the kids who would, get together and play toys. That's what we, so why not do that?
Well, and it's a beautiful thing because, like, I'm sure a lot of other collectors and kids, that were, it was almost a remembering of our childhood at moments of, like, when you had the big battle scenes, like, I had that playset, I had that car. Like, you had a scene in the Revolution where it was the playset that has the hole where the snake comes out.
Yeah.
That I completely forgot I had that playset. I have it in my garage. But, like, there were moments that, like, it unlocked something from my childhood and, like, core memories of, like, I remember playing with that with Swamp Thing, my Swamp Thing action figures from the animated TV show that lasted a year because I thought it was the same.
Because you're talking about the Fright Zone, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So you're going to be seeing more of that in the prequel comics coming out from Dark Horse beginning May 15th. 4 issues monthly.
I know a guy who will have all 4 issues and get every single variant there is if he can.
I do too. He's right here on screen.
You should see all the copies of Revolution that I have because there were so many stories.
Revelation, you mean the comics?
Yeah, Revelation. Sorry.
Yeah, that first issue had like 10 variant covers, right?
And guess who has them all? Calum does.
Dude,
I love
here,
it. You and me,
them all
you and me both, because they give me a copy. But that Alex Ross cover is amazing. The Mike Mignola cover. Somebody, I was just at a fan expo in Calgary this past weekend, and the very last person to come to my table on the end of the weekend came and picked up the Mike Mignola variant cover that we had, and they got it. They wanted to get it signed, and they had it CGC graded. They had it witnessed by a certified witness there. They really wanted that cover. And I was like, that's awesome. I can't believe we got all those.
That is a cover that I have as well. Yes.
I only have the A cover and someone scribbled on it the other day. So.
Hey, look at that.
So, Tim, I want to ask you. Oh, go ahead.
I have a print of that cover hanging on the wall over there as well. It's so good.
That's awesome.
I'm rereading that. Like, the covers, like, this still might be my favorite cover from that A cover from that series.
That's my favorite issue. That's my favorite issue. I love that.
Is that that's where we get a look at Evelyn's backstory,
That's
right?
the Evelyn story,
Yep.
yeah, which we ties into the show in a big way. I just love I love writing Evelyn. I didn't know I was going to love writing Evelyn.
Mhm.
It was, we broke the first 5 episodes, and we had a rough, like, meaning like the writers. There were 5 of us with Kevin. There were 4 writers, plus Kevin, who was our head writer, showrunner, and we all would get together in Kevin's living room and break out the story, have ideas, talk about what we were going to do with the episodes. And we did the first 5, and then we kind of had an idea of what the back 5 were going to be. But we went off and started work on the first 5 before we went and did the back 5 for the writing. And we had a really good idea of what we were going to do with episode 1, 2, 3, and 5. Episode 4 was kind of a little bit more up in the clouds. It was just like, we knew we are going to go to Subternia, and they're going to get the other half of the sword from Scareglow. And because Scareglow had never appeared on screen, and so that was a big thing that Teddy Biaselli really wanted to get into the show, and we all were excited about it. And so when it came time to divvy up who was going to who's going to script which episode, I said, you know what, guys, I love them all, and I don't need to stake a claim. I will take whichever one is left over after you guys all decide what you want to write. And the one that was left over was episode 4, and the Subternia episode. And I was like, great. And we kind of knew we knew the big broad strokes of what we were doing with Orko in terms of where he was going to end up at the end of that episode. Spoiler alert, dead. So I kind of, built toward that. But it was in the writing that episode, I suddenly was just like I was saying earlier, I was like a kid playing with the toys, because I was like, well, which toys do I put together, and what happens when I do that? Like, what happens when I put Orko and Evelyn together? What do they say to each other? And I suddenly found that relationship and that dynamic was really interesting to me, and I really loved writing the two of them together. And I'd written a bunch of stuff, and then I got a call because they were in the casting process while we were scripting, and I got a call that they had that Lena Headey had agreed to play Evelyn. And I just lit up, because I know her voice, and not just from Game of Thrones. Like, I think I became aware of her and followed her starting for the Sarah Connor Chronicles. And she is such a terrific actor. And I knew probably more from Game of Thrones than anything else, what she could do, how she could chew up the lines and just relish them and make you relish them. And so I ran to my computer and I deleted all my Evelyn dialogue and started rewriting all of it for her voice. And it came so easy for me. Like, I was just like, I knew exactly how she was going to sound now. And so it was always a joy to get to write anything for Evelyn. So when I got to write that comic book, getting that issue, that Evelyn story issue, is my favorite one, because something about her in our show. There's something for me about Evelyn, that she just is sort of
She steals moments, man.
She's a scene stealer. She's the backbone of it in a lot of different ways, not only in Revelation when she becomes the big bad villain, but then also, you see her. She plays all sides, and she plays them all convincingly, and it makes her a beautifully complex character. The kind of thing that we always say, like, the show. We wanted the show to feel like it was the classic era of He-Man had grown up with you, and that's how Evelyn feels to me in the show. In the comics, it feels like it's still Evelyn, but she's grown up with us. And now we see the complexities that when you're a kid, you don't see the complexities of the adults around you and the things that are weighing on them and all the decisions they make. You don't understand all that. But when you get older, you look back and you're like, my gosh, when I think about all the stuff my parents were going through, and they were younger than me when they did XYZ. That's one of the ones that starts to get you. that's how it feels. It feels to me like family members who I'm looking at now and seeing, wow, they're so much more complex than I ever thought they were when I was a kid. All of the characters in the show really are like that for us.
Yeah. How you mentioned kind of a little bit about the writing room and having some ideas. How far along did you guys have stuff scripted out, like for Revolution and stuff as well? Because Revolution is the whole storyline basically kind of gets introduced to us in episode 2 of Revelations, of having the whole tech aspect with Triclops and stuff. When they go to that, like, was that something that you knew from there, or was it something that you like as afterwards after rating it said, let's expand on this kind of thing?
That's a question for Kevin and Teddy and Rob. I mean,
well, I'll have them on.
Yeah. I just don't know the answer because they knew when we started Revolution, they knew that the techno cult stuff was going to come into play, because it's sort of the motherboard thing happened a little bit accidentally in Revelation, where it ended. And we put Eric Carrasco, I think, just wrote that suddenly a horde symbol appeared. And I guess I think he really wanted to write Hordak. He wanted the Horde to get into the show. And so his only opportunity was to put that Horde symbol on motherboard at the end and just let it be a big question mark at the end of the show. But it fueled so much speculation and excitement among fans and among us, all the rest of us, that I think that's what sort of then started developing the story. It wasn't that anybody knew what another season of the show what the story would be at that moment. I think there were pieces of it that we knew. I think Rob, David, and Teddy and Kevin, they all knew that they wanted to really cement Tila's and Adam's relationship in the second season. But in terms of the big bad, we weren't really even sure about the Keldor stuff at that point. We weren't sure we were going to do that. There were a lot of opinions about how we do that, if we do that. If you see in the Revelation prequel comic, we tell the demon from another dimension sort of origin from the mini comics. That's what we put in there. And then when you see Revolution, that was sort of a thing that we had to solve for. Was we knew when we decided we were going to do the Keldor story, we had to figure out, well, why for those people who read the comics, how do we solve for that? How do we make it make sense that those things all kind of exist and are the same thing, and can happen and can be both true at the same time? So you see us talk about that a little bit in the Revolution TV series, and then you're going to see even more specifically how that works in the Revolution prequel comic.
That was one of the things when I was watching the show. I'm like, how are they going to do this, man? Like, because 40 years of stuff that has some, not necessarily always consistent in some of the storytelling between some of the comics, the mini comics, the different iterations of the shows. And I was like, how are they going to do this? And I thought, man, I thought y'all pulled it off beautifully. I thought it worked so well.
There's really diametrically opposed sort of fan groups on this. Like, some people really love the Keldor story and some people really don't love the Keldor story. And so we kind of had to figure out how to sort of balance that. And what we did was, I think, talking about headcanon and trying to make things work that shouldn't work together, I think what we did was we ended up coming in and giving you, and you'll see it more in the comic book, giving you an explanation for how those things can both be true at the same time. And I love that kind of stuff. It's satisfying to me. I feel like, it was not obviously the original plan of the people who wrote those stories originally, but when you get to go in and connect the dots and add a little bondo to sort of make all those things all stick together, it's instead of having to just rely on a multiverse to say, which is useful too, but the multiverse is the easiest sort of argument for it, and we were able to solve the demon and the Keldor thing without you going to the multiverse, which was pretty fun and satisfying.
What's the process then different for you, Tim, of when you're because you do a lot of collaboration writing, like you've done it with Jeff Johns and Jeremy, like, Flashpoint stuff. Like, you've done a whole bunch of collaboration now with Masters of the Universe. Where does that shift though from, like, say, writing a script for the Masters of the Universe TV show compared to Masters of the Universe the comic? Like, is there a shift in the writing styles there? Because it still is a collaborative issue, right?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. TV is just designed to be collaborative. The reason why I got hired to write comics at DC Comics was because they wanted TV writers, especially those who had worked with DC characters and knew the lore and everything, which I was one of those people. They wanted TV writers because we're accustomed to working in a room together with other writers and yes-anding each other and coming up with story together and cooperating with each other and getting a better result out of it. And that's not typically the thing that happens in comics. So it's a little bit more isolated. Everybody's sort of doing their piece of the puzzle and adding it, to build the comic book. So I'm really accustomed to working with other writers and with other voices in the room. But we all are. Anybody who comes from television is. Now, in terms of the Revelation book, Rob David and Kevin Smith wrote a story document for what the 4-issue story was going to cover. Like, here's what issue 1 is, here's what issue 2 is, and they wanted to focus on one character in each of those. And they had a pretty good idea of the plot of what was going to happen in the issue. And then they asked me if I would script it. And so at that point, I just had a document that they worked on, and I worked from that document, and I created the scripts that, and worked with Mindy Lee, the artist, to make the book. That's not uncommon, even in TV. The executive producer will come to you, like Kevin Smith he wrote a 15-page document for what Revelation, the TV series was going to be, and then we all kind of worked within the parameters that were set up by that, and then you write to that. But along the way, you start solving for things, and you think, oh, I can do this better. Since I'm in it, I can see it better than they could when they were writing the pitch or the outline document. So now I'm going to connect these pieces and make this a little bit more streamlined, and then that will make sense, and we'll cut to this. They wanted the Orlax of Primaria to be a thing in the center of the prequel comic for Revelation, and I was the one who had named the Orlax of Primaria in Revelation. This was a tentacled beast that we all knew from the sticker in the Grayskull dungeon in the playset. And I looked everywhere, and I was like, I don't believe that this has ever been given a name before. And so I just, I did all kinds of stuff like that in the show. Like the Trollan spell spring was something that had never existed before, but I needed a thing. So I gave it a name that sounded like it came from Masters of the Universe. And so the Orlax, I think they asked me to write the comic because they were like, well, Tim sort of gave us the Orlax of Primaria name and kind of gave that an origin. So let's let him flesh out that origin a little bit more. So that's what I ended up doing. So it's like Flashpoint Beyond was a weird way to do a comic book, but it was exactly how we do television. Jeff Johns, Jeremy Adams, and I got in a room together with a big whiteboard, and we broke the story and figured out what was going to happen on all the pages. And then we kind of went off and scripted different parts of it, and then shared all of our stuff and made a comic book. It was incredibly rewarding, especially for those. Jeremy and I both came from television, so it felt like being home again, that writing that way. The Revolution prequel comic, Rob David, Teddy Biaselli, and I got together, and the three of us just started pitching what the story would be and figuring out and we started working out what it was going to be. We came up with an idea for the story. I wrote a story document. It went through a couple of revisions, and then I went off and scripted the book, and working with the magnificent Daniel HDR, who is drawing this book, and may I say beautifully. He's quite good.
Nice.
Can't wait.
I'm so excited for that. I'm so excited. I feel like I could talk to you both about Masters of the Universe forever. Calum, is there anything that we haven't mentioned that you wanted to ask Tim while we had a chance here?
Well, I haven't got him to firmly commit to much of anything past Revolution, and I get it's not all in his control, so to speak, but
I have no control.
yeah, if you can't at least commit to another show, can you commit to, like, we're already working on the idea for some more comics to come? Because see, there's not enough Masters of the Universe comics that come out consistently. Like, there would be some demand to consistently be bought. If no other house, like, I promise this house will buy every one of them. So
that alone will get you the sales right there, Calum.
Let me tell you this. I think if this is, this is not an official word. This is me as a fan talking. Just, I think that even if we don't see more stuff on TV, I can't imagine. I mean, the stuff that's been coming out from Dark Horse has been really good. I can't imagine that they won't end up doing more comics, and they may be even in the Revelation and Revolution universe, and who knows. I'm not working on any of those right now. Revolution right now is the prequel comic is the last thing I'm doing. But I got a random message I don't know, a month and a half, 2 months ago, from a very well-known comic book artist. And more than that, he's got quite a diversified career. He's a huge Masters of the Universe fan, and he's never gotten to work on Masters of the Universe. And he said he had a couple of ideas, and he said, you want to work on a pitch together for a comic book for Masters. And so we started working on a pitch for something, but we have not, it's right now, it's just the two of us working on something, and it's a big enough swing that it would be a long shot that they would greenlight it, but you never know. You'd never say never. You got to shoot your shot and hope for it, and we'll see.
I definitely hope it comes.
He's drawn some stuff already for it, and I got to tell you, it's exciting. It's going to be exciting.
I buy a lot of comics, and I love comics. I love to read, but sometimes I don't get the time to invest into it that I would like. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I buy way more comics than I actually get to actually sit down and read. But no matter what, whenever there's a Masters of the Universe book that comes out, it gets read every single time.
I hope you like the Revolution book. I got to tell you, the Revelation book is a weird thing because, I was really writing to that story document, but also I was brand new to comics. I had just gotten hired by DC to write my first comic book. And at the exact same moment, I got the call from Kevin to write the Masters of the Universe prequel. So I was writing my first comic books at the exact same time, and it took me a little while to learn that I didn't really know what I was doing writing comics. Like, I came from TV and movies. So it was a big crash course for me. So there were things that I really felt like were strongly about and wanted to do, and I don't know how I mean, I look at that I was looking at it this weekend. I was flipping through the trade paperback in Calgary, and I was like, how did I get away with this? Like, the Orlax narration is designed to be this, like, heady, booming voice of the gods, like just Shakespearean sounding, and it's hard to read. I look at it now and I'm like, oh, hang on, wait, why did I do this? But then I made jokes about it throughout, like, where Skeletor's like, oh, come on, like, just, can the poetry. Let's just get to the point, But I love that voice in comics, and I just wanted to put one in to this book because they weren't letting me do it at DC. So I really wanted to have this booming, larger than life narrator voice. Oh, the many worlds that bubble, But none of that is in the Revolution book. The Revolution book I've had a lot more comics under my belt now, and I feel like a little bit more comfortable in how I am scripting a comic book story. Although I got to say, I just looked at the proof of issue 2, and I'm like, oh no, maybe I've done it again. I don't know what I've done.
I have no doubt that I'm going to enjoy it. I'm excited for it to come out, and that was when I was doing the Google trying to find out part 2 of Revolution, please tell me there's one coming. Please tell me, like they broke up the first season, with
Well, a
Revelation.
lot
So,
of people asked that, and they had said it, but a lot of people didn't believe us that there were only
but
5 episodes. Yeah,
but I did discover ahead of time that we had the Revolution prequel comic coming out, which if I can't get the show, hey, the comic,
it's you
I'm
know
getting something that's gonna feed
Yep.
feed the flame, so to speak.
it's
So I'm
also
excited.
it's also not like Revelation. Revelation was like, let's focus on one character in each comic, in each one of the issues. This one is, you know, 4 issues. It covers a large span of time, but it sort of jumps time between issues a little bit. But it really is when Hordak met Skeletor or Keldor. It's and it's filling. We're just trying to fill in terms of the Revolution universe. We're just trying to fill in all that stuff that you heard in the dialogue in Revolution between the two of them. You saw a couple of quick flashbacks. This book is going to take you back to those flashbacks. You're going to see. It's going to match up for you. You're going to be like, oh, this is in the show. Like I'm still looking at a scene that's from the show, and it's expanded upon, and all, we've sort of given it more weight and more information, and so, it sets the pieces where they need to be set in order for the revolution story to happen. So that's what the aim is of the book, and I hope people enjoy it. It's very much Hordak and Skeletor.
So
Can you hear my cat? Can you guys hear my cat?
I actually heard it. Thought it
I
was
didn't.
mine.
I didn't, but Calum has a cat too. So
That
you
is
all have
my
a
cat.
sixth sense.
My cat. I speak a little bit of cat, and he's saying, "Buy the comic book. Buy it."
It's the truth. It's the truth.
I do speak a little bit of cat because I got to write Battle Cat's first lines in the show in Revolution in episode 2. He has a little speech. They actually cut out a little section of it that makes me sad because it was just this little artful thing that he says, and we didn't have time for it. But it was a beautiful. I think it's a beautiful moment between when he says, "I have loved being your battle cat."
Oh yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
This has been so much fun. Talking about Master of the Universe again. I wanted to don't like just. I was like, listen, we've talked about Alan Scott Green Lantern. We've talked about Teen Titans Academy. I was like, we need to dedicate an hour, and that's not even enough time. But out of respect for y'all and your cats, who are probably hungry, I want to.
Yeah, that must be what's going on. Oh, you know what? It's an hour past his dinner time. That's right.
So as we're wrapping up, Tim, obviously you have comic book, the prequel to Revolution coming out here May 15th as the first issue drops. Go pick it up, gang, check it out. If you haven't watched any of the Netflix shows and you've stayed around this entire time listening to us talk about it, why did you not pause this and go watch the show? I mean, I appreciate it. Like, thanks for watching us, but like you should have paused it and watched the show and then come back. Do you have anything else? Alan Scott's wrapping up issue 6 here, right?
Issue 6 of my Alan Scott series for DC is going to be out a week after Revolution issue 1 is out.
Okay.
So that'll wrap up when Revolution is starting, and I can't talk. There's nothing else I can talk about at this point. So
Perfect.
Just Revolution. Pick it up, and I hope you enjoy it. It's another labor of love from people who are big MOTU fans.
Yeah. Calum, thank you for guesting with me, kind of helping this conversation. Where can people follow along with you without your collecting? Because you have one of the coolest comic rooms around.
Well, I appreciate it. Instagram, it's chaos136925. So,
Hang on, let me write this down. Let me write this down.
And then
Chaos. What?
136925.
136925. I was told there would be no math.
there is no math.
There's
You
no
don't
math.
add them
There's
up.
just
You just have
numbers.
to. It's just reciting, remembering. And then Tim, where can people follow along with you? So when you can announce stuff.
Yeah, link to my socials. You can see I'm really bad about updating information on it, but timsheridan.com. has links to my Instagram and Bluesky and Threads. So and handy links to Amazon where you can pick up fun stuff like the Revolution prequel comic.
Fantastic. Gang, this has been so much fun just going down childhood memory lane with you all, tapping into some old school nostalgia.
We have barely scratched the surface.
I know
we're gonna have to do it again.
We can. So maybe let's get something on the after the series comes out.
We'll wrap it up. We'll do a wraparound when the series is done and we can talk about it.
Yeah,
and I can tell you, I can explain what I did. You guys can
imagine the pain I felt when I just heard a few moments ago where you two sat and discussed Teen Titans, and I wasn't a part of that. So,
oh no, oh sorry.
That is my favorite superhero group. So,
great. I got to have some fun with the Titans.
Yeah, that was the first time I ever had Tim on the show was when you were doing Teen Titans Academy. Shazam, the 4-issue mini was out. Like it was the summer of Tim Sheridan, like because I think like Masters of Revelation was out that like
Long Halloween came out that summer. Like it was ridiculous. That Shazam book was funny. Or was it the Shazam book, or was it no, it was the annual for Teen Titans Academy. And I think it was also the Shazam book. On the front cover, it's got my name on it. And then you turn the back cover was an advertisement for the Long Halloween. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm all over this thing.
There's a reason you're so widely known in Cleveland.
Yeah. Sometimes it all happens like that though. It's weird when you're doing animation and comics, what it's just all hit at the same time. Revelation came out right when Long Halloween, it was all right in that moment. And then after that, everyone forgot about me.
But then we're back and we got you again.
We're back.
So, well, thank you both for talking about our love for Masters of the Universe. And as always, go pick up the latest issue of Revolution. Comes out May 15th. Pick up Alan Scott if you aren't reading that. Easily my favorite, one of my favorite DC books. We talked about it again. Well, we'll talk about that. Like I had you on before Alan Scott came out, and it was so good. And now, like, I want to talk to you afterwards. We can wrap it up.
I'm so nervous about.
You have some reveals on issue 5. I don't want to get there. I'm just like,
I'm so nervous. I hope you like issue 6. I'm so nervous.
Let me know. I've already got the first 5 issues. I'll pick up 6, and I'll get caught up reading that as well.
So, yes, all right. So we'll have a discussion again, gang. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. As always, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.